Atmos is pointless because we only have 2 ears and no one's gonna set this stuff up in their house, so no one's ever gonna be able to experience it. What are we even doing here? Atmos is a conspiracy by speaker companies to sell more speakers. Today in this video, I'm gonna tackle all of these things and we'll see what you think when you get done watching this. Hey everyone, I'm Cole Caparoon. Thank you for stopping by for another video. Now, I promise this video isn't meant to start an argument. This video is not meant to convince you that you should buy an Atmos rig. This video is kind of more of a preemptive video because as you can see behind me, the Atmos install is underway. Now, I have posted 3 or 4 videos about Atmos already on this channel, and they were quite controversial. And one of the issues is there's so much bad information out there and so much lack of education out there, and it's impossible for me to just reply to every comment, and it's impossible to educate people in the comments anyway. So today I want to tackle all of the arguments against Atmos, why it's stupid, why you shouldn't do it, why it's a conspiracy, all this stuff. And one, I hope that this just educates people. First of all, that's what I really want, is to just help educate people, not to convince anyone that you should get involved in it. But also, I'm kind of doing this video because there's going to be a whole series of Atmos videos coming up, and I don't have time to argue with people in the comments. So I would just like to make a video, an all-in-one resource, where every time someone says Atmos is stupid because you only have 2 ears, or it's a conspiracy, or no one's ever going to get to experience it, or just all the arguments against Atmos that people have, I just want to be able to reply with a single YouTube link. So that way, hopefully we can get some education going around this topic. So let's break this down one argument against Atmos at a time. And the first one, and the most common one that I see from people, is that we only have 2 ears. What do you need 15 speakers for when we only have 2 ears? We only have 2 ears, therefore we only need 2 speakers, left and right. Now, from the very beginning of this, before I ever even experienced Atmos for myself the first time, I thought that this was an odd argument because we have quite literally biologically evolved to hear sound from every direction. Like literally, and it stems from when a tiger was sneaking up from us from the back left, we could hear it coming from that direction so we could avoid danger. That's where this all came from. Now today, when you're walking along on a hike or something and an airplane flies over, not only can you tell it's above your head, but you can tell which direction it's going. And it starts over here and it gets louder as it flies, and it gets louder until it's over your head, and then it gets quieter as it keeps going. And you can tell all of this. When the wind is blowing the trees, you know where the trees are going, even if you're not really feeling the wind yourself. When a car drives by, you hear it drive by. When someone comes up behind you and says, "Hey Colt, love the channel," I know that someone is behind me, not in front of me. So we have quite literally evolved to hear sound in 360 degrees, below us, above us, in front of us, behind us, and everywhere in between. So the idea that we only need 2 speakers because we only have 2 ears, that's just a bad argument, because we're hardwired to hear sound in 360 degrees. Now, whether or not Atmos is the best format to consume music, that's a different conversation, which we're going to get to later in this video. But for the first time in history, we are able to consume music in the way that we literally evolved to hear. That's pretty awesome. And even if you don't think it's awesome, it voids the argument that we only have 2 ears, so we only need 2 speakers. Okay, the second argument against Atmos that I hear the most often is it is a fad, just like quad or just like surround sound, 5.1 surround sound. It is a fad that is not gonna last. Therefore, it is a pointless waste of money to buy all these speakers and put a rig like this in. This argument is getting more realistic for sure, because quad is nowhere and 5.1 basically doesn't exist anymore. So there is some merit to this argument. However, it still stems from a place of lack of education and lack of knowledge, lack of information. So how is this all different than quad and 5.1? The problem with Quad and 5.1, there was exactly the same problems actually. It was that you did have to have those setups in your house in order to experience it. You could not possibly experience anything other than the stereo spectrum unless you had all of these extra speakers and this extra setup to be able to listen to Quad and to 5.1. Now, when people say this, what they don't actually realize is that half the TVs and 90% of the sound bars that you buy and all of your Amazon Alexas and your HomePods that you buy from Apple, like a ton of the very top end cars all have Atmos. Your own phone, if you take your iPhone, which most of us have, and you have Atmos turned on your iPhone, and you play an Atmos mix from Apple Music, which is on by default, by the way, and 95 or 98% of every major release that's a popular song is available in Atmos, and you just take your cell phone and hold it like this, right in front of your face, it will blow your mind how the sound just wraps around you and envelops you in a bubble of sound right from your cell phone. So when people say that it's the same as Quad and 5.1, the thing that they don't understand is that the consumer electronic base for Atmos that supports Atmos, that allows people to experience Atmos, it's already existing. Everyone already has it. This is not something new that people need to go out and buy. They already own it. Like 50% of the people in this country already own a device that is Atmos capable. Which leads me to the next point, when they're like, no one's gonna experience it in exactly this way, so what's the point? I don't think people need to experience it in exactly this way. This is the best version of it, for sure. When you go in a world-class acoustically treated room with many tens or sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of speakers, it's mind-blowing. Like, it's truly a life-changing experience for most people that get to experience it. And I plan on hosting a bunch of listening parties here in my room because I want people to experience it. And then if they still don't like it, by all means. But the grandma baking cookies in her kitchen that has an Alexa or a sound bar that puts out Atmos, she's not gonna know that this is what it could be. What she's gonna experience is this new cool thing where it feels like she's walking through the music, where the music feels three-dimensional, where it feels like it's coming from different places around her, and that's gonna be cool. That's gonna be neat. There is no point of reference for her to be like, oh, I can't ever experience it in this environment, so what's the point? No, they're just gonna experience something cool, unique, and interesting, and more immersive. And I think a lot of people are gonna find that fun, interesting, entertaining. And some of it does a pretty convincing job. My TV over there in Studio B, when I first set it up, it has like 5 speakers on the back of it, or I don't know how many speakers. It's got a subwoofer and a bunch of speakers on it. And when I set it up, it's like, we must calibrate your room for Atmos. And I hit OK, and I swear to you, as a sound engineer that works on audio and makes music for a living, I sat in front of that TV and I heard it go, pew, 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 pew. And then it was like calibrated. And I'm like, what just happened? This was before I ever experienced Atmos myself. Is it the same as sitting in a studio with Atmos? Of course not. Do I hear audio surround me? Yes. And it's cool. So the consumer electronics side is completely in place already. Also, all of the premium cars, the Mercedes S-Class, the Lucid Air, some of the Teslas. A buddy of mine just bought a Rivian that they're getting an update for Atmos very soon. And once we get into cars, once it becomes commonplace in not just the very top tier cars, but in the upper half of the price range of cars, I mean, that's a total game changer. Now that brings me on to another point of education that I think a lot of people don't realize. What Atmos does is it automatically knows how many speakers are in the system you're listening to, and it automatically folds the mix down to be appropriate for your listening environment. For instance, the rig that I'm installing here is a 914 system. What that means is there are 9 speakers surrounding me at ear level. There are 4 speakers over my head, and there is 1 low frequency channel, Even though I have 2 subs, they're on a single channel. Now, when I mix a 914 Atmos mix in here and someone listens to it on their 714 or any number all the way down to a 2.1 system, it automatically collapses the mix to be appropriate for those other systems. And so even if you're listening on a 512 system, whatever scale of a system the cars have or someone's smaller Atmos rig has, it's automatically scalable. Do they get the full experience of a 914 or a bigger system? No, but it is an approximation of it, and you still get that surround thing. And that is pretty neat. Now on to the next argument, which is Atmos mixes sound like crap. Now, there's some truth to this, but it's not for the reason that I think people are saying it, or that I think they're misinformed when they say this. There are a lot of really bad Atmos mixes out there. The last time I was at Sweetwater, I was in their Studio C, which has an identical rig to what I'm installing here, and a brand new Atmos version of a very, very popular 90s rock band got released. Now, you would think, given the production of this band, that they're a prime candidate for Atmos. However, it was absolutely terrible. It was unbearable. It made my skin crawl with how bad it sounded. Now, since then, I've gone on to hear Atmos mixes that absolutely blew my mind, and Atmos mixes that I wouldn't be able to convince myself to listen to. And so why is that? Because yes, there's some real truth to their Atmos mixes sound bad. A lot of them sound really, really bad. And what I think this is we are so new in this environment, in this new format, that there's gonna be a lot of learning curve and a lot of people that just aren't that great at it, even though they may be incredible stereo mixers. And I think this is not too dissimilar from when stereo first came out. Everything used to be mono. And when stereo first came out, you had stuff like the Beatles putting the drums on the left and the bass guitar on the right. Literally no one does that anymore. Absolutely no one in any sort of popular music. But back then, they didn't know any better. And I think that's a really interesting parallel to what's happening today in Atmos, is there's a lot of moves being made, a lot of mixed decisions happening, is just out of a lack of experience or a lack of any sort of standard. You know, eventually we got to a place with stereo where we just all realized and agreed that kick, snare, vocal, pretty much up the center, that's the best thing. And I think we will eventually get to those similar places with Atmos where, you know, it's just like there's like some sort of standards. Like this sounds best and most people agree with it, so this is what we're gonna do. Now, the other interesting thing about Atmos mixes not sounding as good as stereo mixes is, one, I think you have to find the good ones, because there are some incredible ones, and I'll do a whole bunch more content on that. But I spent about a year ago, a little over a year ago, I had a flight to LA from here in Nashville, so it's about a 4-hour flight. And I thought, you know what I'd like to do? I really want to wrap my head around this. What does Atmos sound like compared to the stereo mix? And so what I did is I had my Apple AirPod Maxes and my iPhone, and I downloaded 40 or 50 songs, actually, to my phone, and I downloaded the Atmos version and the stereo version. And I spent 4 hours straight listening to the stereo version, listening to the Atmos version. Next song, stereo version, Atmos version. Next song, stereo version, Atmos version. I literally did this for 4 entire hours because I was kind of a similar opinion that most Atmos mixes, especially in headphones, did not sound as good as the stereo mixes. What was interesting is there were definitely songs where I didn't think the Atmos mix sounded as good. That's 100% true. There were plenty of songs where I didn't think it was. But what was interesting is about half of them, by the time I landed in LA, I was like, the Atmos mix sounds better. And I literally spent the next handful of days trying to analyze this and trying to process this. First of all, how could some of them sound worse than stereo and some of them sound better than stereo? And also, how could I think they sounded better than stereo? partially because the deliverable for Atmos is -18, and most of the stereo masters that I'm listening to are -6, -5, -4.5. Like, they're so loud. Well, when you're listening on headphones, they are automatically level matched as you're listening. And what I came away with, why I think I ended up preferring the Atmos mixes on about half of them, is because they weren't smashed. Because there was incredible dynamics in the Atmos mixes, the good Atmos mixes. There was incredible transient information in the good Atmos mixes. And it almost made it more emotional because the dynamic range of the song was so much greater at -18 than it was smashed to -5, that not only did you have all the transient and you had all the dynamics and the louder parts were even louder and more impactful, but it also felt like the emotional content was amplified because of the enhanced dynamics, because of the song having more dynamics. Now, on the subpar Atmos mixes, I definitely didn't feel that. Absolutely not. They're just worse in every way. So I think there's going to be a learning curve. And I think, just like with stereo, there's going to be mixers that are incredible and mixers that are not incredible. And that's the way it is now for stereo. Now, the other thing that is truly fascinating about Atmos to me personally is the fact that most work that I do in audio is fairly dense. There's a lot of elements going on. It's big, thick, aggressive, dense productions is most of my work. And what's interesting, Chris Lord-Alge said it best like 15 years ago. He's like, it's like a row of parking spots from left to right. And you have to fit every instrument in a parking spot. You have to carve up space to like fit it all in a spot. And so like when I'm doing a hard rock song that has an acoustic guitar in the chorus, I have to carve up that acoustic guitar, and it basically becomes a shaker when I'm done with it in order to fit it inside of a wall of electric guitars with huge drums. And that kind of sucks. It sucks to have to take this super awesome Gibson guitar recorded with 10 grand worth of microphones, recorded through incredible vintage preamps, and then you have to like carve it up and fit it in a parking spot, and it basically becomes a shaker. That sucks. But now with Atmos, you just put it somewhere else. You just put that acoustic guitar where nothing else is, and you don't have to carve it up, and you don't have to turn it into a shaker. That acoustic guitar can live over here in its full glory. And somehow, when you do that right, on the fold down in headphones, it still sounds incredible, but only when you do it right. And I'm not ready to sit here and tell you what the right and wrong ways are. Hopefully that'll come sometime in the future. Now, in terms of this being a conspiracy by speaker companies to sell more speakers, well, of course the speaker companies are pumped about it. Of course they are. Instead of selling 2 speakers, they get to sell 15. Of course they're excited about this. But none of this is coming from the speaker companies at all. We could probably do a whole nother video on who is actually pushing this. But for the most part, it's Dolby and Atmos that are pushing this because they believe that immersive is the future. That between games and movies and content, immersive is going to be our future. And it doesn't make any sense to have stereo audio with immersive visual. Now, the last thing is this worth it though? Is this investment, because it is a significant investment, is it worth it? And that's something that I'm looking forward to telling you guys over the next few months and years, like looking back and was this all worth it? And I will be as transparent with you as I possibly can be. To me, there has to, with any sort of investments in your studio world, there has to be a period of time in which you pay it off and then you start moving into profit. I think everyone's different for that sort of thing. A significant investment like this, to me, it needs to be like, it needs to have paid for itself and start making me profit within 5 years. That's kind of how I'm looking at this. This needs to be a profitable situation. I need to have covered the cost of every piece of gear included in this and start profiting, 100% profit within 5 years. That, for me, that's what I feel like the break-even point needs to be in order for this to be worth it. For you, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's a year, maybe it's 10 years. And that's a question that each of us have to answer as individuals. There is a whole series of Atmos videos coming, and I will put links down below for every single piece of gear that I use in the Atmos rig and otherwise. And those videos go to Sweetwater. Those links go to Sweetwater. And if anytime you guys need absolutely any piece of musical gear whatsoever, you can click on any one of my videos and click on any one of the links in the description of any video. And once you're on the site, you can purchase anything that you need. And if you do that, it costs you nothing extra, but it goes a long ways to help support what I'm doing here, support this channel, and help me keep making educational content just like this video. So thank you, Sweetwater, for sponsoring this video, and thanks to you guys for using the links in the description anytime you need to purchase anything at all. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to subscribe. Drop me a comment. Let me know what you think about all of this. There will be quite a playlist of videos coming on Atmos. It's not going to be the only sort of content on this channel. I'm still going to do lots of stereo content. I'm still going to do mix tutorials for stereo, but there's also going to be a lot of Atmos content coming. So if you're into that, subscribe. And I appreciate you guys watching. I hope that this helped you. I hope that this informed you. I hope you have more information with which to make your opinion on this whole Atmos thing. So I guess that's it. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.